Rumors swept through Manchester like wildfire. Sergio Ramos, a free agent, might be coming to United. For most fans, it was excitement. But for Ethan Ward, it was hope. His son, Liam, lay in a hospital bed fighting for his life, clinging to the belief that heroes still existed. Ramos was Liam's symbol of strength. And when a black car approached Old Trafford that night, Ethan realized this wasn't just transfer news. It might be the miracle his son needed.
Welcome to my YouTube channel. A story a day, please subscribe our channel, thank you. The January wind cut through Manchester like a quiet warning, whispering through the steel ribs of Old Trafford as if the stadium itself sensed a storm coming. Ethan Ward stood outside the northeast entrance, hands buried deep in his coat pockets, his breath turning to soft clouds in the cold air. He had spent 23 years photographing players for Manchester United, long enough to see legends come and go. Long enough to learn that football wasn't just a game. It was hope stitched into leather, heartbreak wrapped in glory, and sometimes it was the place where life found meaning again. Tonight, however, he wasn't here for work. Tonight was personal. Rumors had exploded across every screen in England. Manchester United were interested in bringing Sergio Ramos in January. Free agent, negotiations possible, a headline electric, enough to jolt life into fans who had almost forgotten what excitement felt like. But Ethan had a different reason for caring. His son, Liam. Liam had adored Sergio Ramos since he was 7, a defender not for his trophies, but for the fire in his eyes, the refusal to break no matter how heavy the moment. Liam, now 18, was lying in a hospital room only 10 minutes away, fighting harder than any footballer ever had to. Cancer didn't care about strength, didn't care about dreams. Didn't care that Liam had never missed a United match in his life. But Ramos? Ramos represented bravery to him. His walls were covered with posters, quotes, match photos, even a signed replica shirt Ethan had managed to get years ago during a Champions League night in Madrid. The last time Liam had spoken clearly, he whispered, "Dad, if Ramos ever comes to United, you have to take a picture of him, for me. Promise. A small promise. A heavy promise." So Ethan came here, clutching a hope that felt ridiculous and sacred all at once. Maybe Ramos really was coming. Maybe he'd walk through those doors. Maybe, just maybe, Ethan could capture one moment for his son, something real, something powerful, something to remind Liam that heroes did exist in a world that had hurt him too much. Footsteps crunched on the frosted pavement behind him. "Ethan?" Came a familiar voice. He turned. It was Jacob Ingram, one of the club's media officers, wrapped in a red scarf, cheeks flushed from the cold. "You're here late. You heard the news?" Ethan nodded. "Can't quite believe it." Jacob inhaled sharply. "Well, you might want to stay around. Something's happening tonight. Not official yet." Ethan's heart lifted, painful and hopeful all at once. "Is it really him?" Jacob didn't answer directly. Instead, he asked quietly, "How's Liam?" The question cracked through Ethan's chest like a fault line. "Rough day," he murmured. "But he's fighting." Jacob placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Then let's hope tonight gives him something worth fighting for." Before Ethan, the black car slowed to a halt, headlights cutting through the dark like a quiet promise. Ethan instinctively lifted his camera, though his hands trembled too much to take a proper shot. It wasn't nerves, not exactly. It was the weight of hope, the fear of disappointment, and the small whisper in his chest saying, "What if it's really him?" Security moved first, surrounding the vehicle, forming a barrier against the cold and the unexpected. Jacob stood beside Ethan, trying, and failing, to hide his own curiosity. "If this is who we think it is," Jacob murmured, "tonight we'll explode." The driver stepped out, tall, dressed in black. He walked around to the passenger side. The door opened. But in life, hope rarely arrives easily. It wasn't Sergio Ramos who stepped out. It was Darren McBride, United's director of football operations, stern-faced, phone in hand, coat pulled tight against the wind. Ethan's heart dropped like a stone thrown into deep water. "So it's not happening," he whispered before he could stop himself. Jacob shrugged helplessly. "Not yet. But Darren being here at this hour. Something big is brewing." Ethan nodded without believing it. Liam's face appeared in his mind, pale, exhausted, but still wearing that United scarf like it was armor. Ethan had promised him he'd take the photo. How foolish he felt now. What if all this was just another rumor, another headline that led nowhere? Darren looked around, spotted Jacob, and walked over. "You two shouldn't be out here," he said, voice clipped but not unkind. Jacob scratched his head, just keeping an eye on things. Darren glanced at Ethan, recognizing him. "Ward, I heard about your lad. I'm sorry." The simple sincerity almost undid him. "Thank you," Ethan managed. Darren hesitated, then lowered his voice. "Look, I can't confirm anything, but there's movement. Important movement. If something happens tonight, it will happen fast. You may want to stick around." And with that, he disappeared inside. Ethan stood still for a long moment, letting those words settle. Movement. Not confirmation, but not denial either. A spark. A flicker. A breath of hope. His phone buzzed. "Nurse Rachel, Liam's ward, he's awake. Asking for you." Ethan's chest tightened. He looked at Jacob. "I need to go." "Of course. I'll text you if anything happens." Ethan hurried to the car, the cold biting at his heels. 10 minutes later, he stepped into the familiar white corridor of St. Christopher's Hospital, the scent of antiseptic wrapping around him like a memory he wished he didn't know so well. Room 218. He pushed the door open gently. Liam turned his head, a weak smile forming. "Dad." Ethan sat beside him, brushing his hair back. "Hey, champ. You're awake." Liam's gaze drifted to his camera bag. "Did you get the picture?" The question hit him like a blade. Sharp, honest, hopeful. Ethan swallowed hard. "Not yet, but I will. I promise." Liam nodded softly, as if believing it made. The soft beeping of the heart monitor filled the room with a rhythm Ethan had grown painfully accustomed to. Liam's breathing was shallow but steady, the kind of fragile steadiness that made a father grateful and terrified at the same time. Ethan took his hand gently, feeling how thin it had become. Yet somehow, Liam still tried to smile. "Dad," Liam whispered, "you look frozen." Ethan laughed under his breath. "It's January in Manchester, son. The whole city's frozen. But you were at Old Trafford, right? Waiting for him." Liam's voice cracked on the last word. Ethan nodded. There was movement. Nothing confirmed, but something's happening. Liam closed his eyes like he was picturing it, Sergio Ramos walking through those doors in United Red. If he comes, it'll be the biggest thing that's happened to the club in years. Ethan squeezed his hand. "And I'll be there to capture it. For you." For a moment, they sat in silence. The hum of machines, the muffled voices in the hallway, the quiet fight of a young man refusing to give up. Then Liam whispered, "Dad, do you think he'd want to meet me?" Ethan's throat tightened. He didn't want to lie, didn't want to crush hope, either. "I think," he said slowly, "that if Ramos understood what you've been through, he'd want to meet you more than anyone." A flicker of life lit up Liam's eyes, brighter than any medicine they had tried. "Imagine that," he breathed. Meeting him." The door opened softly, and Nurse Rachel stepped in, smiling kindly. "He's still awake? That's a good sign." "Liam, you're pushing harder than we expected." Liam shrugged weakly. "I have to stay awake. Dad's got work to do." Rachel glanced at Ethan. "Are you heading back there tonight?" Ethan hesitated. Guilt tugged at him, leaving Liam alone, chasing a hope that might not come. But then he remembered the promise, the look on Liam's face. The spark of strength Ramos had always given him. This wasn't about football. This was about fighting for something that helped his son breathe a little easier. "Yes," he said softly. "If anything breaks, I need to be there." Rachel nodded. "Then go. I'll stay with him." Liam squeezed his hand. "Dad, make sure you're fast. You know how these transfers go." Ethan managed a faint smile. "Don't worry. I'll run if I have to." He kissed his son's forehead, lingering just a moment longer than usual. Then he stood, grabbed his coat and camera bag, and forced himself to walk out of the room without looking back. He'd fall apart if he did. The night air slapped him as soon as he stepped outside, the cold harsher now. Sharper, as if the world was telling him time was running out. Back at Old Trafford, security lights still glowed. Only a few staff remained. But the tension in the air was different, charged, alive. Jacob's message buzzed on Ethan's phone. "He's coming. Tonight. Get here now." Ethan didn't think. He ran. Ethan sprinted across the nearly empty stadium grounds, breath burning in his chest, camera bag thumping against his side. Every gust of icy wind stung his face, but he didn't slow. Jacob had said he's coming tonight. Not maybe, not possible. Coming. And that single word carried more weight than any headline ever could. By the time he reached the northeast entrance again, Ethan was gasping. Jacob was already there, pacing with nervous energy, phone in hand. "You made it," Jacob said, eyes wide. "Good. You're not going to believe what's happening." Ethan bent over, bracing his hands on his knees. "Tell me it's true." Jacob swallowed. "He landed at Manchester Airport an hour ago. Quietly. No cameras, no press. The club arranged a private transfer. They're trying to finalize everything before sunrise." Ethan felt his heart leap so sharply it almost hurt. "So he's signing?" Jacob didn't answer with words. He simply nodded. For a moment, Ethan couldn't breathe. Not from running. Not from the cold. From something else. Relief, disbelief, prayer, and fear all tangled into one overwhelming surge. Movement flickered near the gate. Security began repositioning again, forming a controlled path from the entrance to the interior corridor. Ethan steadied his camera, hands trembling with adrenaline. Jacob whispered, "This is it." A black SUV rolled slowly toward the checkpoint. Sleek, tinted, the kind of vehicle reserved for people the club didn't want the world to see yet. Ethan lifted the camera to his eye. The door opened. A tall figure stepped out, wearing a long coat, head slightly bowed against the cold. A familiar stride. A presence that carried decades of battles, trophies, scars, and stories. And when he lifted his head, the stadium lights caught his face. Sergio Ramos. Ethan didn't know he had stopped breathing until his lungs screamed for air. He snapped photo after photo, each click feeling like a heartbeat. Ramos looked older than he did on TV, not weaker, not diminished, but older in the way soldiers look older, like he had fought through fire and was still ready for more. His expression was calm, controlled, but there was something else too, determination. As if this move wasn't about fame or money, but unfinished business. Jacob whispered, stunned, "This is actually happening." Ethan took a step forward, instinctively, as if drawn by something beyond reason. Not to speak, not to interrupt, just to capture the moment, to freeze it forever. Security allowed him only a few meters of space, but that was enough. Ramos glanced briefly toward the small cluster of staff, and for half a second, his eyes met Ethan's. Not for long, just enough for Ethan to feel something shift. Hope, purpose, a message without words. Ramos continued inside, flanked by club officials. The doors closed behind him, sealing history in motion. Ethan lowered his camera slowly. Tears stung his eyes, but he blinked them away. Ethan didn't drive back to the hospital. He floated. His hands shook on the steering wheel, not from the cold this time, but from adrenaline, from disbelief, from the rush of knowing he had captured something the world hadn't yet seen. The photos sat safely in his camera, each one a piece of history, each one a lifeline he hoped Liam would cling to. The hospital parking lot was quiet, washed in yellow light. It was nearly 1 a.m., the hour when cities sleep, when corridors fall silent, when fears grow louder. Ethan walked quickly through the entrance, nodding to the night guard, heading straight toward the elevators. As soon as he stepped out onto the ward, Nurse Rachel spotted him. Her expression softened. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Ethan smiled breathlessly. "Not a ghost. A miracle." Rachel tilted her head. "Did you get what you needed?" Ethan didn't answer. He simply held up his camera bag. Her eyes widened, understanding instantly. "He's awake," she whispered. "Barely, but he's awake." Ethan hurried to room 218 and pushed the door open gently. Liam lay half-sitting, propped up by pillows, eyelids heavy but fighting to stay open. His skin was pale, the kind of pale that frightened doctors. But when he saw his father, something lit up inside him. "You're back," Liam whispered. Ethan sat beside him, breath still uneven. "I didn't just get back," he said, voice soft, trembling with emotion. "I brought something for you." Liam blinked, confused. "For me?" Ethan opened his camera, scrolled through the images, and turned the screen toward his son. The first photo showed Sergio Ramos stepping out of the black SUV, coat flowing, stadium lights glinting off his face. Liam inhaled sharply, a small, stunned sound. "Dad, no way. No way. Is that?" "It's him," Ethan whispered. "He's here. Tonight. Signing." Liam's trembling fingers reached toward the screen, as if he needed to touch the moment to believe it. "He's actually coming to Manchester United." His voice broke. Tears slipped from the corners of his eyes. Not from pain this time, from something far more powerful. "This is real?" Liam asked, breath shaking. Real, Ethan said. I waited. I watched him walk in. I took these photos myself. Before anyone else. You're the first to see them. Liam covered his mouth weakly, overwhelmed. Dad, it's like he came for me. Ethan's voice cracked. Maybe he did. Liam stared at the photos for a long time. His eyes filling, his chest heaving with emotion. I want to be there when he plays his first match. Ethan held his son's hand tightly. And you will. We'll sit together in the stands. Liam nodded slowly, as if trying to believe it with every part of him. Then, with a faint smile, he whispered, Dad, you kept your promise. Ethan closed his eyes, overwhelmed. Always. For the first time in weeks. Liam drifted to sleep with hope warming his tired heart. And Ethan stayed by his side, knowing this was only. Ethan barely slept that night. He stayed in the chair beside Liam's bed, watching the steady rise and fall of his son's chest, listening to the gentle hum of machines that held life together. The doctor had warned him earlier that Liam's condition was entering a critical window, one where the smallest change could swing everything, for better or worse. But tonight, something was different. Liam slept peacefully in a way Ethan hadn't seen in months. That alone felt like a victory. As dawn broke, pale light filtered through the hospital blinds. Rachel entered with a soft knock. He had a stable night, she whispered. Better than we expected. Relief washed over Ethan, warm and overwhelming. Maybe it was the good news. Rachel smiled gently. Hope is medicine too. Minutes later, Liam's eyes fluttered open. He looked exhausted, but alive, with purpose. Dad? His voice was faint, but there was something alive in it. Did the club announce anything yet? Ethan checked his phone. Notifications exploded across the screen. Breaking, Sergio Ramos spotted at Old Trafford. Medical expected today. Deal nearly completed. Ethan exhaled in disbelief. It's everywhere now. The world knows. Liam's lips curled into a tired smile. I saw it first. You did, Ethan whispered. You absolutely did. But then Liam's face shifted, worry flickering across his features. Dad, what if? What if I don't get better? What if I don't make it to see him play? Ethan's heart clenched so sharply he had to steady himself. Liam, he said firmly, leaning in, you're not done fighting. And we're not done fighting for you. We're going to that match. Together. That's not a dream. It's a plan. Liam swallowed hard. I want to believe that. You can, Ethan murmured. And you will. Before either of them could say more, Ethan's phone buzzed again. This time, it was Jacob. Ethan, call me ASAP. Ramos asked for something unusual. Ethan's eyebrows knitted together. Asked for something? He stepped out into the hall and dialed immediately. Jacob answered instantly, voice lowered and urgent. Mate, listen carefully. Ramos saw you last night. Ethan's pulse kicked. Saw me. He recognized your face from somewhere. He asked who you were. I told him your name. And he said he remembered meeting you years ago at a Champions League match. He remembered you gave him a photo of him holding the trophy. Ethan remembered too. A brief handshake, a smile, a simple thank you. You're joking, Ethan said, stunned. No. And Ethan, when I told him your son was sick, he stopped everything. He said he wants to meet him. Ethan's breath caught. He wants to meet Liam? Yes. Today. Before the medical, before the announcement, before anything. He wants to do it privately. Ethan leaned against the wall, feeling his legs shake. Jacob, he'll lose his mind. Liam will. I know. So get ready. Ramos is coming to the hospital. Ethan's world slowed. Then, Ethan re-entered room 218, with a look on his face that made Liam lift his head instantly. Dad? What happened? You look different. Ethan sat beside him, trying to steady his voice. But emotion cracked through the edges. Liam, I need you to be strong for the next few minutes. Can you do that? Liam blinked, confused. I think so. What? Ethan reached for his hand. Because someone is coming to see you. Liam frowned slightly. Who? The doctor? Aunt Helen. Ethan inhaled slowly. No, son. Someone. Someone you've looked up to your whole life. Liam stared at him blankly for a moment. And then it hit. His eyes widened, breath catching. Dad. No. Dad, are you saying? Ethan's voice softened. Yes. He's coming here. Sergio Ramos is coming to see you. For several seconds, Liam didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't breathe. He simply stared, stunned beyond words. Finally, a whisper escaped his lips. No, no way. Dad, don't joke. Please. I can't. I would never joke about this, Ethan said, tears filling his eyes. He asked to meet you. He remembered me. He knows about you. And he wants to come here. Today. Liam pressed a shaky hand against his mouth. Dad, I can't believe this. Ramos. Ramos here? For me. Before Ethan could answer, there was a knock at the door. 2 security staff stepped inside, checking the room calmly but thoroughly. Ethan felt his heart pound against his ribs. Liam froze. Then, with the soft click of the door, he walked in. Not as a superstar, not as a legend, but as a man, tired from travel. Wearing a simple black coat, eyes gentle and honest. Sergio Ramos. The air in the room seemed to shift, thick with disbelief and emotion. Ramos stopped at the foot of the bed, his gaze falling to Liam with unmistakable warmth. Ethan could see it clearly. This wasn't a formality. Ramos cared. Hola, he said softly, accent warm but words clear. You must be Liam. Liam's lips trembled. He tried to speak, but nothing came out. Tears filled his eyes, rolling down his cheeks before he could hide them. Ramos stepped forward, pulling a chair beside the bed. Your father told me you are a fighter, he said. More than any defender I've ever met. Liam shook his head weakly. And no, I'm just trying. Ramos smiled, a soft, almost fatherly expression. Trying is what makes a fighter. Ethan watched silently, heart swelling and breaking at the same time. Ramos gently took Liam's hand. I am joining Manchester United. But today, meeting you is my most important appointment. Liam choked on a breath. I don't know what to say. You don't need to, Ramos murmured. Just know I came because your strength inspired me. Liam cried openly now, quiet, fragile, overwhelming tears. Ramos reached into his coat and pulled out a small box. Inside was a bracelet, woven leather, with his initials engraved in silver. For you, Ramos said, to remind you that you are never fighting alone. Liam held it to his chest. Ramos stayed longer than Ethan could have imagined. Far longer than any superstar with a medical, a contract signing, and global media waiting. Time seemed to slow as he spoke with Liam. Not as a legend visiting a fan, but as a man speaking to a young soul fighting a battle far bigger than football. You know, Ramos said, leaning slightly forward, when I was your age, I was told I wasn't strong enough to become anything special. They saw my body, not my heart. Liam blinked slowly, absorbing every word. Ramos continued gently. People will always underestimate fighters, until the moment the fighter proves them wrong. Liam's breathing hitched. I don't always feel like a fighter. Ramos placed a hand over Liam's. Then listen to me carefully. You are stronger than you know. And strength is not measured by muscles. It is measured by spirit. A fragile smile lifted the corner of Liam's lips. No one's ever said that to me. Ramos nodded. Then let me be the first. Ethan swallowed the lump forming in his throat. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. This man who had lifted trophies in front of millions, who had battled some of the world's strongest players, was here, giving strength to his son. And then, something happened Ethan would never forget. Ramos pulled out a small folded note from his coat. I wrote this on the plane, he said. I didn't know who I would give it to, but I know now. He handed it to Liam. Ethan watched as his son slowly unfolded it, his eyes scanning the handwritten Spanish first, then the English translation beneath. To the fighter I have not yet met. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to continue despite it. Liam's hands shook. I'm really meeting you, he whispered, disbelief still heavy in his voice. Ramos smiled. And I am honored. A knock on the door interrupted them. One of the club representatives peeked inside. We need to leave soon, Sergio. The media is starting to notice your absence. Ramos nodded but didn't stand immediately. Instead, he turned back to Liam. I will play for Manchester United, he said, but I will play my first match for you. Liam gasped, tears filling his eyes again. For me. For you, Ramos confirmed. And when you are stronger, I expect to see you in the stands. Front row, beside your father. Liam nodded, voice trembling. I'll be there. Ramos leaned forward, brushing Liam's hair back gently, a small, intimate gesture that broke Ethan completely. He covered his mouth, trying not to cry out loud. Then Ramos stood slowly, looking at Ethan. Your son has a warrior's heart. And he is lucky, very lucky, to have a father who fights beside him. Ethan's voice cracked. Thank you. Thank you for doing this. Ramos shook his hand firmly. No, thank you. Hope is a gift we give each other. He turned back to Liam one last time. Rest now, champion. The world is waiting for you. And with that, he walked out of the room, quietly, humbly, leaving. The sun rose over Manchester, painting the city in gold and red, the colors of hope, of Manchester United, and now, of a small miracle in room 218. Liam slept peacefully. The bracelet Ramos had given him snug around his wrist, a tangible symbol of courage and resilience. Ethan watched silently, heart heavy with emotion, realizing that in just one night, the world had shifted for his son. The phone buzzed. Ethan glanced at it. Jacob's message. Everything is confirmed. Ramos officially signs today. Photos will break worldwide. Get ready. Ethan smiled faintly, thinking of the whirlwind that had started just days ago with a simple rumor. And yet, the transfer, the visit, and the promise had meant far more than any headline ever could. He leaned back in the chair, letting his mind replay every moment. The trembling anticipation outside Old Trafford. The first sight of Ramos stepping from the car. The look in Liam's eyes when he saw the photos. The words Ramos had spoken, soft, deliberate, unforgettable. Every second was stitched into memory. Every click of the camera a heartbeat frozen in time. When Liam stirred awake, blinking against the early morning light, Ethan felt a rush of gratitude. Good morning, champ, he whispered. Morning. Liam's voice was hoarse but stronger. Did he leave already? Ethan nodded. Yes, but he left something with you. Liam's fingers instinctively found the bracelet on his wrist. A small, quiet smile lifted his face. I can't believe he came. Just for me. You're a fighter, Ethan said, brushing his hand over Liam's. He wanted you to know that. Liam's gaze drifted toward the window, sunlight falling across his face. Dad, I want to see him play. I want to see him on the field, wearing the red jersey. You will, Ethan promised. And when you do, we'll be there together. Front row, right beside each other, watching your hero play for your team. A quiet peace settled between them, one Ethan hadn't felt in months. The fear that had haunted him, the fear that Liam might never see another victory, never feel the thrill of hope, had loosened its grip. The day passed in a blur of messages, phone calls, and updates. Every media outlet was reporting the story. Sergio Ramos, the legendary defender, had signed for Manchester United. But no report mentioned what mattered most. None could capture the intimate, life-changing moment in a hospital room, where a boy facing the hardest battle of his life had met his hero. Later that evening, as Liam rested, Ethan reviewed the photos again. Each image told a story: anticipation, courage, connection, humanity. In one frame, Ramos's hand rested gently on Liam's, a moment frozen in time, far more powerful than any match-winning goal. Ethan knew those photos would inspire thousands, but to him, they symbolized something infinitely deeper: love, hope, and the miracles that can happen when heroes walk quietly into the lives of those who need them most. Finally,